Hey, welcome back. This week I'm going to build a picture frame, and I can finally do this project because I fixed my table saw. Turned out I needed to replace the sheave on it. Just so you know, this is not what the inside of a sheave is supposed to look like. You can also see where some wearing happened on the outside. This all happened because the sheave had gotten too far over to the right, and also when I raised the table saw up to its maximum height, it was rubbing against the underside of the cast iron top. Anyway, I'm going to make a simple picture frame, kind of like this one, but to hold this picture of tigers that my daughter really likes. Let's get started. First step is to get two strips at 2.5 inches out of both of these boards. Now, even though the grain pattern doesn't match at all, this is going to be a painted project, so that doesn't matter. The next step is to put a rabbet on the inside of the 4 pieces that'll become the frame. This rabbet will hold the picture itself as well as the backing that holds the picture in place. I've got about 3/8 of an inch of the blade up from the table, and I have this fence about 1/4 inch back from the front lip. A Christmas present I got was this foot pedal that operates my router. This is especially handy because the switch on my router is broken. I'm going to use a vacuum to collect most of the dust, so let's get to it. Time to take these 4 pieces to the miter saw. I can go ahead and cut one end, but I need to take some measurements on the picture before I cut them to length. To figure out how long the inside of each piece needs to be, I'm going to measure the picture frame, subtract 1/2 inch, that's for the 1/4 inch rabbet on either side, and then add in 1/16 of an inch, just for a little bit of wiggle room. This picture frame measures 15 and 9/16. When I subtract 1/2 inch, that'll be 15 and 1/16. When I add a 1/16 back in, that'll be 15 and 2/16, so 15 and 1/8. I realize now I should have rounded over the edges of the frame before I put that rabbet on. And there was no real reason to put the rabbet on before I mitered the corners. The reason I should have put the roundover on first is with this wood missing, when I go to run this up against the ball bearing, there's just no wood there to meet the ball bearing. But I can get around that issue by putting my fence flush with the front edge of this ball bearing. a little bit of glue in those miters, and I'm going to let it set up in this band clamp. Well, I let that glue dry up for a long time, and while it was drying, I cut this piece of Luan for the back. I'll use either staples or brads to hold it in place. Only thing left to do is to put a hole in the back so that I can hang it on either a screw or a nail. It's back to the router table with a keyhole bit, and if you're not familiar with that, stick around. I think you'll find it pretty interesting. I've got this fence set up half the distance of the picture frame away from the center of the bit. The idea is that I simply drop the frame onto it and then slide it, and that'll create a channel for a nail or a screw to go into. Alright, I'm pretty happy with how this one turned out. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hopefully I see you back here next Friday. Have a great weekend, and as always, get out there and make some sawdust. Well, this has been a week of a bunch of mistakes. I put that rabbet on the frame too soon. I should have waited till after I'd put the miters and the round over on it. I can't get this band clamp to work. I ended up having to put a lot of wedges in here just to make it tight enough to really grip. But the worst one of all is that the shorter pieces of this frame ended up being an inch shorter than I wanted them to be. That's because when I take measurements, a lot of the time I burn an inch starting at the 1 inch mark. But when you do that, you got to make sure to add an inch to whatever you were going to mark. I don't even think the stock pieces would have been long enough anyway, so it is what it is. And what I decided to do was to trim a little bit off the top and bottom of this picture. I also found out that my miter saw wasn't vertical. It was about 1 degree off. Of course, I found that out after I made the first cuts on the frame, so I had to make those cuts again after squaring up the blade. Sometimes you have projects like this where your head just isn't really there, and you gotta do the best you can to get it done.